New normal big life.
In a tech-driven world, foraging and wildcrafting offer a mindful escape, reconnecting you with nature's bounty and connecting you to the land where you live. Since the early 2010s, driven by the need for a simpler life and the 2020 pandemic, these ancient practices have surged in popularity. Today, foraging and wildcrafting are your gateways to a simpler, more grounded lifestyle, and it's easier to learn than you think. Our Foraging and Wildcrafting Guide for Beginners is here to help you turn your backyard, city park, or backcountry adventure into a free shopping experience for greater food and medicine security. Eating wild foods and using plant medicines created from the fruits of the earth will bind you to a place, its rivers, animals, smells, sights, and sounds, writes herbalist Lisa M. Rose in her book, Midwest Foraging. Hi friends, welcome to the New Normal Big Life podcast. We bring you natural news and stories about nature that we hope will inspire you to get outside and adventure, along with a step-by-step plan to help you practice what you've learned and create your own new normal and live the biggest life you can dream. I'm your host, Antoinette Lee, the Wellness Warrior. Since the early 2010s, a resurgence in foraging and wildcrafting has swept across North America, fueled by the local food movement and a desire for sustainability. The 2020 pandemic accelerated this trend, with younger generations flocking to nature for self-reliance and mindfulness. But what's the difference between foraging and wildcrafting, and how can you start without harming the environment or yourself? Let's dive into the essentials of foraging and wildcrafting, offering you practical steps to harvest ethically, understand key terminology, and avoid deadly mistakes, all while connecting deeply to the natural world. Subscribe to our newsletter at nnbl.blog to learn when part 2 of this series drops, and download your free medicinal plant terminology list in the show description. In a world dominated by screens and schedules, foraging and wildcrafting offer a refreshing escape. These ancient practices, which involve gathering wild foods, medicinal plants, and wildcraft making materials, have seen a modern revival since 2010 through 2015, driven by the local food movement, environmental awareness, and social media's early influence. The 2020 pandemic supercharged this trend as people sought nature-based activities during the lockdown. Younger generations are drawn to foraging for simpler, more grounded lifestyles, notes a 2025 post by a young influencer on X, formerly Twitter. This resurgence reflects a deep desire for mindful living and a connection to the natural world. Foraging and wildcrafting, though often used interchangeably, have distinct meanings. Foraging is the act of searching for and gathering wild food resources like fiddleheads or ostrich ferns, or dandelions for making our dandelion gummies recipe available on our blog and wherever you get your podcasts. The practice of foraging is rooted in survival, with origins in the Old French forage, meaning to search for provisions. Wildcrafting, a term coined in the 20th century, involves harvesting plants for medicinal, culinary, or craft purposes with a focus on sustainability, meaning living some for other humans and animals, and wildcrafting is often tied to herbalism. This intimate connection between you and the land and waters where you live makes the land part of your story, a sentiment echoed by many foragers. But before we cover the next topic in this episode, I want to introduce you to the adventure sports lifestyle with what I like to call a micro story about an adventure that I've had. The adventure sports lifestyle and my deep connection to nature is essential to my good health. So here's the story. The cross-species relationship between humans and animals is an incredible experience that teaches you much about yourself. My equine friend is named Bo. He's a chocolate brown Rocky Mountain gaited horse with silver dapple coloring and a flaxen tail and mane. We affectionately call him Fabio. Bo's 1,000 pounds of stubbornness, and most riders can't get him to do anything. He came into my life when my confidence waned, and I immediately learned from Bo that I'm a capable leader. Here's how that happened. After working with Bo briefly, I could toss his lead over his neck and he would follow me anywhere. Bo came when I called his name, he ate out of my hand, bowed his head to accept my kisses, and sang country music with me, believe it or not. Beer for My Horses is his favorite song. Before long, we felt like one when I rode his back. I did that. I hope this story inspires you to get outside and adventure alone with friends or the people you love most. Now back to the story where we're talking about ethical harvesting and how it's a forager's responsibility. As stewards of the land and waterways, anglers, foragers, and wildcrafters must harvest ethically to ensure fish and plants thrive for future generations of humans and animals. Ethical harvesting begins with understanding plant reproduction. Some plants spread by seeds, others through rhizomes, tubers, bulbs, spores, or suckers. When harvesting ethically and sustainably, assess the patch. If it's a sparse patch, move on. Even in dense areas, take no more than 10% to allow regeneration. I always photograph my foraging spots to track their health over time, shares avid forager Sarah Thompson from Michigan. It's heartbreaking to see a patch disappear because of harvesting, she says. For annuals, pick leaves or tips to preserve seeds. For mushrooms, carry them gills down in a basket to disperse spores, as advised in the book The Forager's Harvest by Samuel Thayer. Target invasive species like Japanese knotweed, which offers fiber and trace minerals, while supporting native ecosystems by removing these non-native plants. When harvesting nutrient-rich plants like those with vitamin C, for example, take only what you'll use immediately. Vitamin C degrades quickly, so don't harvest more than you can use right away. Here's a pro tip. Dried herbs lose potency over time, so replace them annually to maintain efficacy. Foraging isn't without risks. Misidentifying plants can be deadly. For example, confusing poison hemlock with wild carrot can lead to respiratory failure. The American Association of Poison Control Centers reports over 50,000 plant exposure cases annually in the U.S., primarily involving children, though serious outcomes are rare. Globally, serious plant poisoning is rare worldwide because most exposures are accidental. Experts note in the Handbook of Poisonous and Injurious Plants, a book I highly recommend if you're going to become a forager. Toxicologist Dr. Lewis Nelson emphasizes the risk of misidentification is significant and education is the best prevention. Foraging expert Samuel Thayer adds, you must know a plant through its entire life cycle to avoid deadly mistakes. My recommendation is this. Spend a full harvest season learning to identify plants. Start with regional guides like Lisa Emrose Midwest Foraging or Nicole Appelian's The Forager's Guide to Wild Foods North American Edition. Collect multiple guides, go to libraries, nature centers, and use bookstores. They're great resources for foraging books. I keep a shelf of plant guides because no single book has it all, says Thompson. I also have books, and I use the Picture This app because you might not have internet access when you need to identify a plant, especially in an emergency survival situation. So that's Antoinette's tip right there. After this short break, we'll talk about how to get started foraging and wildcrafting. World events are constantly teaching everyone some very painful lessons. Without warning, everything we take for granted can suddenly fail. And if you're not prepared in advance, you really don't have a chance. The fact is, the modern world runs on a just-in-time supply schedule. Even the biggest grocery stores can carry only enough food for a few days' worth of normal shopping. So when disaster strikes and chaos ensues at your local stores, the odds are simply against you. If you don't have emergency food and gear stockpiled in advance, you will probably suffer. My partner Ready Hour is here to help you ahead of time. Ready Hour has a long history of providing calorie-rich, reliable, and delicious nourishment for life's unexpected situations, and critical emergency gear too. They're part of a family of companies that have served millions of people like you for decades. My family and I use Ready Hour products for camping, mountaineering, and disaster preparedness for 5 years now. They're not just reliable, they're also your affordable option too. Long-term survival food shouldn't break the bank. That's why they have great sales and payment options for you. It's your bridge to safety and survival when things just aren't normal anymore. So make your next decision your smartest decision. Be ready for tomorrow, today. Trust Ready Hour. Ready to shop? Use my affiliate link in the show description. To get started foraging and wildcrafting, begin by exploring your local area, whether urban, suburban, or rural. I started foraging in my city park, Thompson shares. Dandelions were everywhere. When first starting your journey into foraging, draw a map of your area, noting geological and man-made features, and track your finds with sketches or photos. Pay attention to the seasonal cycles and bloom times, journaling your observations. You can do the same with targeting fish species too. Kids love this activity. It's something they can do together with you or on their own when they're a little bit older. And it's an activity that you'll have in common and can bond over. We taught plant identification, not really foraging, but just identifying the plants to youths age 6 to 16 at our nonprofit's adventure camp. Parents and grandparents later reported that the kids still practice plant identification, and they're teaching the adults in their family. One 11-year-old boy on the spectrum was distant from his family and struggled to make friends. Then he started teaching people about his new hobby, foraging, or plant identification, really. It reconnected him with his family, and he made some new friends. When looking for ways to harvest plants, always get permission to forage on both public or private land, unless you own the land. Permits for public lands are often very affordable, like $25 to harvest a Christmas tree on federal land. Before moving to a forest, my family and I helped the Forest Service remove trees to allow the healthiest trees to thrive. There's only so much space for tree canopies, roots to spread, and access to sunlight and water. Allowing the public to buy a permit to harvest a tree means the Forest Service won't have to do this work. Urban foragers should be aware of soil contamination risks. Lead and pollutants can accumulate in plants, especially in city soils. I avoid harvesting near old industrial sites, says Thompson. She advises you never know the land's history. So if you're unsure, find a new spot is what I advise. Having the right tools for the job is essential in foraging like anything else. A well-equipped forager or wildcrafter needs hand tools like digging forks, pruners, leather gloves. You'll need containers like baskets, cotton bags, paper bags, and collapsible bowls. It's important to have botanical ID materials like plant guides and the Picture This app that I use. Have your camera, a sketch pad, and a journal ready. The appropriate clothing for foraging can mean the difference between being comfortable or miserable. Here's the essential gear you'll need, but remember, you don't have to buy new clothes. You can use what you have for now and get specific clothes later as you grow into the hobby. To get started, you'll need long pants and a long sleeve shirt, comfortable lace-up shoes, and weather-appropriate layers like a rain jacket in the spring, quick-dry clothes in the summer, and warm clothes in the fall. Remember, the weather can change suddenly and unpredictably. Once on a foraging hike in Colorado, it was 78 degrees when I set out on my hike. 30 minutes later, my dog and I were running for our lives through whiteout blizzard conditions, trying to get back to the car before we froze to death. So no matter the weather, plan for the worst possible conditions. In an upcoming episode, I'll teach you about a few lightweight pieces of inexpensive essential gear to buy so that you won't die in the woods. Pun intended. Don't Die in the Woods is the brand name for many of the products that I'll recommend. Be sure to follow me on X at nnblblog and subscribe to our newsletter at nnbl.blog to be the first to know when this new content drops. There are a few essential items that I suggest for safety. Always carry a basic first aid kit, hydration in a refillable metal water bottle, and snacks that include protein, fat, and a little sugar to keep your glucose level stable and your brain functioning while you're out on this adventure. Tell a trusted person where you're going, your route, and what time you're expected to check in with them. If you don't return at the appointed time, they'll begin looking for you or send the authorities to help you. Pack for a longer trip than planned, Thompson suggests. A 1-hour walk can turn into a 3-hour walk when you're lost in nature's beauty. For your foraging next steps, I suggest you start small and stay safe. This first season as a new forager, I recommend that you focus on learning, not eating. Start with familiar plants like fiddleheads or ostrich ferns and dandelions, which double as food and medicine. Be sure to try our dandelion and honey gummies recipe. That episode is available now. One of the things I love about foraging and wildcrafting is that it gets you outside. The first action step to becoming a forager or wildcrafter is to get outside and take a look around. You'll see which plants live nearby you. Pay attention to the cycles of the year, the weather, and the bloom times of the wild plants. Make notes in your journal, sketch out your forage area, and make a map. Also incorporate photos. I like to print my photos because you never know when you might need access to your journal and your photos and you don't have electricity. Although we have a whole home solar generator, I wouldn't use the power to surf the internet. Foraging can be a fun way to get outside and soak up some vitamin D, get your steps in, do some forest bathing, and spend some solo time or time with friends and family. I hope you'll enjoy this new hobby as much as I do. Until next time, friends, I'm your host, Antoinette Lee, the Wellness Warrior, here at the New Normal Big Life podcast. I hope one day to see you on the river, in the backcountry, or in the horse barn, living your best life. Tag New Normal Big Life or nnbl.blog on social media so we can celebrate your good health and big life. If you're a visual learner, you can watch an informative and entertaining version of this video on YouTube on the New Normal Big Life channel, coming soon, or listen wherever you get your podcasts. Share this episode with someone who needs it, comment or post, and drop us a message or email, nothing personal, too specific, when you have a health or adventure sports topic that you want us to cover, and support others in this community. Since 2012, the Health Ranger store has been answering your calls for a trustworthy, responsive, and affordable source of health-focused products. Built from scratch with its own US-based fulfillment center and dedicated in-house customer support, they've got you covered. From nutritional supplements and superfoods to storable foods and preparedness gear, they offer competitive prices on top-quality, lab-tested items. I'm excited to partner with the Health Ranger store to bring you the purest, most reliable products out there. Ready to shop? Use my affiliate link to get started,